Hi, everybody coming in. We got some people loading in, joining from all over the place. Thank you so much for being here. We got people from all over. Josh is in Florida right now. Todd's in Oklahoma. I'm in Minnesota. You can warm up the chat. Tell us where you're coming in from. We're super excited that you're here to talk to us today about Windows and using them to help enhance some digital literacy skills and stuff like that with Todd and Josh. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to have a Q&A at the end, but you can still feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat throughout the session. I'm going to be watching it, and I'll make sure that your questions get to our presenters. Again, Q&A at the end. If we don't get to it during the presentation, we'll get to it at the end. And then at the end, we're also going to have an exit survey, and that's your way of saying, hey, I'm here and I want coffee. So make sure that you stick around and do that at the end. It's super helpful for us to kind of get some of your feedback. One more thing, a big thank you to our sponsor for today, Lenovo. Yeah, they are sponsoring the session and they're helping pay for your coffee. So a big thank you to them. And I'll give it over to Josh and he can kind of get us kicked off.
Awesome, Kate. Thank you so much. I love seeing the chat. I've got this chat pulled up right now. I love seeing where people are joining here from. And you guys keep doing that as we're doing introductions. I would love to just see, I think it's so much fun to see where people are coming in from. So that's super exciting. Yeah. So like Kate mentioned, my name is Josh. I'm that country hillbilly accent you hear. That's West Virginia. That's home for me, is in West Virginia. I'm actually in Florida right now, attending a conference. But I'm super happy to be here. This is always such an honor, such a good time. I'm going to do some introduction kind of things for me and for Trafera. But before I get too far into that, Todd, do you just want to jump on here and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Todd Borland. I'm the Executive Director of Technology for Union Public Schools. We're a K-12 school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, about 16,000 kids.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Todd, and thanks to everybody that's coming in. So I'll do a little bit of introduction here, and then we'll get started with our actual content. So just so everyone kind of gets a feel for who I am. My name is Josh Ratliff. I'm Director of Education Initiatives for Trafera. I'm a former teacher, former administrator. I deeply passionate about not only just tech integration, but also people empowerment. I want to share a little bit of our educational philosophy that's going to help set up the talking points that we have for today. At Trafera, we believe firmly that the most important piece in our educational structure is the people. If we're buying all these technology devices, and don't get me wrong, a good future-proof, future-ready education does involve a lot of technology, of course. But if we're buying all of these technology things and we're not also empowering teachers to use those technology tools to create that instructional environment that our students deserve using those technology tools, if we're not also investing in principals and administrators to make sure that they understand what high quality technology integration looks like, really the devices and the things and the stuff that we put into schools matter a lot less if we're not also investing in people. So what we always say is people are more important than things. And so, with that being said, that is the backbone of all of our education initiatives. We believe that to our core. And with that being said, at some point, we do need to consider the specific technologies that we're going to bring into the school and understand, how those devices are going to be used instructionally. And so that is kind of the focus, I think, of today's presentation. And so I'm going to ask Todd to come in and share some things. Todd, when we look at the technology device that is chosen for a one-to-one deployment or for lab deployment, what we see a big portion of the time is a Chrome deployment, and I think somewhat less an iOS deployment. And you guys have chosen a really interesting path that I think is not only fascinating just on a kind of a path less chosen perspective, but you've also got some really great reasoning behind why you guys have chosen to deploy one-to-one Windows. And so I wanted to just start with that, is like, what was kind of the driving motivation for you guys to use Windows as your primary deployment platform?
Yeah, for us, our goal and our motto is 100% career and college ready.
Yeah.
So when we are looking at when we're doing how we're going to do a one-to-one, a lot of our local districts jumped out ahead of us 6, 7, 8 years ago, and they all went Chromebook, and we weren't at that point where I didn't feel like it was the best solution for my kids. When I talked with the districts, I asked, why would you do this? And it always came down to, well, they're so much cheaper than Windows laptops. And I just had an instructional problem with making a decision about student learning and student impact that's financial based.
Right.
So we'd rather step back. We waited for a year or two. Luckily, the good thing about Google is it really drove Windows prices down.
Right.
So we were able to step back and get a device that's comparably priced, but in our environment where we're located, all of our local businesses, all of our local universities, none of them use Google. None of them used Google Docs. None of them used Chromebooks. They all were some flavor of the Microsoft suite.
Right.
So for us, we've been Microsoft since early 90s. So for us, it was an easy decision to stick with Microsoft. I didn't have the soft cost associated with retraining my staff, new teachers coming in that have never used Google before. We knew how to use Windows. We knew how to use Office. So that transition was very easy for us. And more importantly, when our kids leave school, when they go to our local universities or our local businesses, they're all using Windows, all using Office suite. So it's an easier transition for them to get back and get up and running whenever their next is.
I was going to ask too about specific use cases and stuff like that. Are there classes or use cases that you think that you're seeing a lot of in your schools that you think, man, this is a really great place for Windows. This is a place where Windows really shines for?
Well, for us, obviously, we lead with Windows on everything. So for us, we really look at our CAD programs.
Yeah.
We're heavily invested in STEM with Project Lead the Way and various other content providers. And a lot of these applications are really driving AutoCAD and Intune and Inventor and all these different other toolkits. A lot of these applications just don't run on Chrome OS. So we started looking into this because we actually evaluated Chrome a couple years ago. When COVID first came out, we stepped back and said, maybe Chrome's what we want to do for remote and management and everything else. Maybe we do want to do this. But then we started looking at all the applications we use, and for us, it just didn't make sense. So we stayed Windows, and obviously we're continuing to expand upon that.
You mentioned management, and that's something that I sometimes hear about is, people that love, the Chrome environment say, it's so easy to manage. What are the management processes for managing Windows, and have you encountered very many obstacles deploying Windows at the scale? And actually, let's take one step back, Todd. Before you answer that question, there's probably people on the webinar who may not be familiar with the size and scope that you have. So can you share a little bit about the size of your deployment, and then talk about some of the obstacles and some of the logistical things?
Yeah, definitely. So my environment, my department, we manage pretty much anything that plugs in or blinks. So my department, we manage about 70,000 devices throughout the entire network. I've got a staff of about 18. So for us, any decision we make on what we're going to do, how we're going to deploy something makes the huge ramifications. How do we sustain it? We've got to be able to support, we've got to be able to deploy and manage the device without really dedicating a full FTE to it. So for us, we use two products. We use Microsoft Intune and another called Manage Engine that allows us to do pretty much everything you can do on the Google management suite. We can push software, lock desktops, change images, push a favorite, re-image remotely, all those different applications we can do remotely, because our goal is to not touch devices.
Right.
If we can do 100% remote management, especially in the age of COVID, it made everything a lot easier. So we've invested in the tools to be able to do management from a centralized perspective.
What about classroom management? Do you have a solution, or is there a way to do like a kind of like give the teachers some control inside of her classroom to do, screens up, screens down, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we use Lightspeed for our internet filter, because
Okay.
obviously every device has to be filtered on-prem as well as off-premises.
Okay.
So Lightspeed does a great job of that. They have a program called Classroom. And what
Okay.
Classroom allows us to do, the teachers can go in and blank the screens, force them to the same URL, see a thumbnail view of where every kid is and kind of see what's going on with it. But we've also been able to use it that next level, instead of just managing the classroom, but also to help guide instruction. So when kids are doing something really good, the teacher can see it, bring that up on her screen, bring it up on the smart board, and then do a whole group discussion of, what's working, what's not working here, why it's such a good example. So
Right.
we're able to not just use it as a mean of controlling what the kids are doing, but also engaging the kids in the instructional process.
We've titled this thing, this webinar about digital literacy, and I wanted to hit that for just a minute, because I think the term digital literacy is kind of painting with a broad brush. I know a lot of people, that term means something different to a lot of different people. So let me just frame that term for just a second for everyone who's on the webinar. When we're talking about digital literacy in this context, we're talking about one's ability to seek and find information using technology resources, and to evaluate that information for its authenticity and its accuracy. And I think sometimes what happens is, in some school settings and in some situations, you may have a group of students who is proficient and who has skills on just maybe one platform or with one piece of technology, or they have one thing that they go to, and that kind of becomes almost like a crutch to them. They know that one thing and they can do it well, but outside of that, they can get a little bit stuck. And I know for you, one of the things that you looked at when choosing Windows was market share and what the demand was for the jobs and the industry that your school system serves. And would you be willing to share a little bit about, what the demand is for you guys there locally in the Tulsa area, and how that relates to maybe a little bit more exposure to the Windows environment in the K-12 space?
Yeah, for us locally, we do a real big push on career readiness. So not all of our kids are going to college, we know that, and we want to be able to embrace that. So we do a lot of partnerships with the city, local businesses, private businesses, where we place kids in those programs with the expectation that they'll learn the skills, so when they graduate high school, they just stay employed with that company.
Right.
So it's an easy transition. It's an easy placement for these kids to kind of go and do their next, whatever that looks like. What we're finding, what we're hearing from a lot of these businesses, is they want these kids to come in with skills, especially the computer skills and digital proficiency, where they don't have to teach them, all right, here's how you do a PowerPoint, here's how you do an email. A lot of those skills that we're teaching now automatically go over and transfer over easy. So we do scheduling through Outlook. So that way, when they go into the business side, most of our businesses locally are all Outlook shops.
Okay.
So when they go in and they do their internship, they know how to schedule, they know how to find resources and allocate and put all the different attachments together. So they know all those skills. So when they go, we're not having to explain to them, okay, they know, they understand the concept, but it's a different form because of Google Docs or whatever. So a lot of our business drives a lot of our decision of how we, especially our upper level grades, of what we do with those kids.
What are some of those CTE programs, or that clarified CTE, career technical education? What are some of those programs that have interesting technology integration?
Well, obviously my kids is my favorite one.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I take about 15 to 20 kids every year, and we get them Dell certified and Lenovo and all that good stuff. So that way they leave, they have a skill set on computer repairs. We've got automotive repair, we've got culinary arts, we've got. I mean, even the automotive repair, they may use more technology than my Dell internship kids do.
sure,
The automotive repair is nothing but computers.
right,
Then we have internships that are local law place where they're just kind of a paralegal intern assistant person.
yep,
And they do a lot of just the digital filing of paperwork,
right.
but it's not the old days of you print off a piece of paper and you stick it in a filing cabinet. Everything is now done through digital filing cabinets. So they have to be able to track and maintain and place all the documents accordingly.
This next one, I'm sure is going to seem like a dumb question to you and probably other people in the room, but you'll have to forgive my ignorance because I don't know enough about this to really speak to it intelligently, but I know you're super passionate about esports.
Mhm.
And would you share a little bit of that about that? And also, again, sorry for the dumb question, but the esports programs, I assume, are running on Windows. And is that I would imagine a certain configuration, you'd have to have graphics to process all that. And, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak a whole nother section on esports. I mean,
Yeah, give us.
now you're in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll keep it very quick, but no, esports encompasses many different platforms. So
Okay.
the way, depending on the program, depending on the game, and depending on what your team is for, some require console based, like Nintendo
Okay.
Switches.
Oh, gotcha.
But if they're not console specific, they're all being done from a Windows PC.
Okay.
There's no competitive esports programs that have Macs running on the back end or iPads or Chromebooks. They're all PC based, especially the higher end games like Overwatch and those type of games, because the graphic processing is so significant. You have to have a specialized GPU just to be able to run the game.
Right.
Same with Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop
Okay.
requires higher end GPU. So with the esports, obviously it's blowing up. So many kids are partaking and engaging these kids and just keeping them connected to schools. So we're obviously very well vested in it. It's one of our biggest programs we have in the district now.
With the school I know your high school runs 3,800 kids. With a school that size, do you find that esports is a great way to connect students who are otherwise not going to, they're not going to play on the volleyball team, they're not going to run track, they're not going to, do you find that true there at Union?
I think what esports does the best is it takes a set of kids that may not have a connection to the high school right now,
Yeah,
and it gets them connected with peers. But more
right.
importantly, it puts my programs are required grade checks.
Okay.
So we have an adult talking to the kid weekly about their grades, about their class, about their progress, to make sure that we're keeping the most important thing, which is getting these kids graduated. So
right.
It's just more things we get to do, of just one more tool that we have to engage kids. It's not for every kid. It's not a silver bullet by any means,
Right.
but those kids that find a connection with video games, it's just one more way we can keep them coming to school every day and keep them progressing toward that graduation.
Now, if a school district has limited resources that they can put into this, can an esports lab function as a CAD lab or as a Photoshop lab, or is it that could I use the same technology to run Adobe Suite that I do, esports?
Yep, definitely. Especially if you have the computer that's designed for like the Overwatch, the more intense applications,
Yeah, right.
you can run anything you want on that. We use ours for multi-purpose. We also do it for PD day. So
Okay.
we'll bring teachers into the esports lab. We don't have the lights going or the fogger going,
Right.
but we do have all the TVs going and all the lights blinking on their table. So they like that part of it. But we definitely use it for more than just video games.
I know historically, you guys have used, maybe different technologies and such, but this most recent purchase that you had with Trofero was with Lenovo. Can you speak to, what was your thought process there by switching over to the Lenovo system?
Yeah, it was twofold. One is with ECF funds.
Okay.
So, as you know, with the ECF fund, once it got released, we had 45 days to make a decision.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround.
Which, when we're buying 5,000 laptops, 45 days is not what we typically do, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So for us, we've been a traditional Dell house for years and years. What we found 2 years ago, we went one grade level with Lenovo.
Okay.
And what we found from my guys is the number of repairs that we're doing was significantly less than what
Oh,
we're
wow.
doing with the Dells.
Okay.
And we weren't 100% sure if it's just our ninth grade kids were super conscientious about their laptop and we're keeping it very nice, which if you've been around 14, 15-year-old boys, that's
Right.
probably not the case.
Yeah.
But either way, the Lenovo seemed to hold up better. So we made that decision that, all right, we're going to give it a try with ECF funds. And more importantly, Lenovo had a lead time that was a couple weeks versus many, many months. With
Gotcha.
everything going on with COVID, delays, everything's delayed. You can't order cheeseburgers anymore. But Lenovo is able to get the product to us quicker than anything else. So for us, being able to get devices in-house, get them turned over was a very significant factor in making that switch.
Yeah. I've been around this long enough to know that those kinds of practical things make a big difference. It's not just the device. I mean, the device, maybe holds up a little better. That's great. But how that translates is to more instructional uptime. You don't have kids sitting around, with an easy excuse that says, oh, I don't have my device, I'm not going to be able. And it's also very, as a former teacher, it's very frustrating to be able to design a lesson for 28 out of 30 kids, and you got 2 kids sitting there who can't participate, and it's so frustrating. And so when you have a device, it's a little more durable. You get that instructional uptime, and it's less headache for you guys on the technical side too. Kate, I have not been able to keep up with the chat. Could you maybe come on and just share some questions or comments from the chat?
Yeah, I would be happy to. We had one that came in. Well, we had a couple actually. Okay, so let me see. Jamie asked about the software that you had mentioned that you were using for management. So I think Microsoft and Lightspeed got brought up, but I think there was one that we missed when we were going through.
Yeah, the software called Manage Engine. It's a cloud-based subscription, or you can buy a perpetual license.
And the other one you mentioned, did you say Intune, Microsoft Intune?
Yeah. Intune.
Okay.
Intune, and we have Autopilot. Autopilot's really nice.
And then the Lightspeed is your filter, but it's also your classroom management solution as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Awesome. Do students have secure credentials? The students with Microsoft cert. I don't know if I understand that one, but.
So, and this could be a whole nother session I'd like to speak on. One of the things we've started 2 years ago is we've gone the route of blockchain. So we're putting all of our digital credentials for our kids into the blockchain so they can kind of control who has access to it and who doesn't have access to their information. So instead of me being the gatekeeper, they kind of own their data that we publish and we say is, it's an appropriate, it's accurate data. So we promote, starting next year, any of the, we're calling micro credentials, the Dell certifications, the automotive, culinary, any of those certs will get published into their blockchain for the digital certification, and they can share it with a prospective employer as well as a university.
That's interesting. I don't fully understand. I would like to have another session there so I can get a better understanding, but very interesting approach. Was there something else in there, Kate?
That was actually the only other question.
Okay.
That was the only other question. We can do a little celebration for Jenny, who's taking classes on literacy and technology, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Sharing that you're doing that, Jenny. Cool to hear.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, you can still pop them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself at this point. Some more things that we can that I want to talk about. We are offering free demos for Lenovo ThinkPads. So if you're interested in trying it out for yourself and seeing if that's a good solution for either your students or your teachers, we do have some demos that we want to get to people if you're interested in trying them. So you can scan that QR code. Otherwise, we'll also be sending these links in the follow-up email. We have another coffee and combo session next week. So I hope we see you all again next week. It's with our friends at Logitech, and we're going to be talking about how to empower teachers as content creators. So that's going to be another really fun one that we're going to have. And again, you can scan that QR code, or we're going to have the link available in the follow-up email. Then we can just keep going on Q&A if people have more questions. Otherwise, I will also launch our exit survey now. People have to get going. Time is precious.
I love the chat is so alive right now. I love everybody participating in that. That's awesome.
Could either of you speak a little bit about schools that are maybe current Google schools wanting to integrate some more Windows devices in their school for some of the higher powered activities like STEM, AutoCAD? So if you're generally a Google school, is our Microsoft or our Windows device is something that you can kind of easily integrate in that environment?
Well, I don't mind to take a crack at that, and I'll probably need Todd's help for the logistics of it. But that is my talking point right there, Kate, on the idea of digital literacy and digital fluency. Is just, I think it's so important that kids see more than one platform if they can. And if you are in a situation where you're like, hey, look, we're a Google shop and I love Google stuff. Look, I love Google stuff too. I kind of cut my teeth on iOS, and then I got trained as a Google certified trainer, but now I'm using Windows a lot. And I think there's an advantage of having some exposure to all of those, because Todd made a really interesting point earlier. He was like, look, so many of our businesses are running Windows. And that's absolutely true. I wonder if that will still be true in 10 years from now. The fact is, we just really don't know. And so the more that we can do to bring some exposure to multiple platforms, the better off we're going to be. So I think if there's people that are on the call and they're like, hey, look, we're using Chrome or we're using iOS and we're pretty happy with it, maybe there is some advantage to having a few Windows labs, or to Kate's point, a CAD lab or Esports Lab or an Adobe lab that maybe uses all the same. Maybe it's one lab, that is functional in all of those ways.
All right, I hear that we have some mics that got turned off, so you guys can feel free to ask your questions whenever you're ready. Okay, if I can't hear you, super long.
I can mute that mic back if we need to. Yeah,
if you're able to just pop that question in the chat, your mic isn't working super well. Okay.
I'm going to step in if you guys don't mind. Hi, I'm Sid. I'm from.
Hey, Sid.
Can you guys see me now?
Yeah.
I'm actually sitting in the lobby of a hotel, so if you guys hear a lot of noises, you know why. But I wanted to step in the price point. I know that's a huge worry for everybody going from Chrome to Windows devices. I don't know if most people on here know that there is a program to be able to get a discount for Windows on like Windows Pro 10 or like Home that Lenovo actually utilizes, and that's called Shape the Future. So I know, again, price is a huge factor here. So just looking at the program will actually help with some of the pricing when it comes to some of these devices that people might be looking at for their students, especially higher education.
I would have gave you a shout out earlier, Sid, if I would have known you were on here. I didn't see you in here.
Yeah, no worries. I'm here. My name is Sid. I cover K through 12. Enrollment sizes from 2,500 to 8,500. I actually cover Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you too. I mean, thanks for being here. You know what I mean.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you guys. And I'll put that link on the chat if anybody wants to check it out.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Steven. He says, are you using group policy to manage student device permissions? Does this sync from add to Azure or set policies in Azure and Intune?
I think it's a tough
I think-
question.
That seems like a
Yeah,
Todd
yeah.
question.
Yeah. I know he's typing.
Sorry,
Todd, if you might be muted.
Yeah, I put that into the chat.
Oh, I got you.
Oh, great.
We do a hybrid deployment. We put our one-to-ones into the Azure AD, and then we replicate it also to on-prem for additional management and some other stuff that we're doing. But then Manage Engine itself can also tie into Azure AD to allow us to do a little more, patch updates and all that good stuff that we have to do on the Windows side.
Great. Okay, what is the Windows equivalent to Google Admin?
Well, it kind of depends on what you're using the Google Admin for, but if you're using it for user management, it'd be you can either do it on-prem with user management, or if you're using Azure, you can do it all through Azure AD. I'm going to guess majority of the people are going to do Azure AD. Azure AD and Google Admin are really comparable to each other. So if you're actually doing a one-to-one deployment and you're going into the Windows route, you probably aren't going to go into the on-premise model
Right.
just because of the complexity and the headache that goes with that. You probably want to just start with Azure AD and stay Azure AD, probably because the next 5 to 10 years on-prem will be very, very minimal for everybody else anyways. We're actively looking to move all of our stuff Azure AD as much as we can.
And Azure is just the cloud-based user management, Active Directory management.
Yep, for Microsoft. Yep.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, great. Man,
Anyone
great
have any
question.
other questions? We're running a little bit over time now, so
Yeah, yeah.
thank you everyone for being here with us today, having this conversation, being super active on the chat, having great questions. Thanks to our presenters, Josh and Todd. And again, if you haven't taken the exit survey, please do that before you leave. Yes, there will be a recorded link that is sent in the follow-up email. So you'll get the recording afterward, as well as some of the links that you saw earlier. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And we hope we see you at some more of our coffee and combo sessions. And if we would love to reach out to you to talk more about any of this if you're interested. So thanks again for being here. Okay, bye guys.
Thank you.